welcome to the panel discussion of GIS and drone usage and how that marries up, which is something that's new and exciting in the GIS field. Instead of working with engineering and military guys, these people that I will be interviewing today work with drones, and how flying a drone and marrying up the data that you get from the drone marries up with the GIS and the land. My name is Nick Humphrey. I work with Montgomery County. I've been doing GIS for about 20 years now. Started in the military for 10 years, then became a government contractor, processing GIS data. Came to Houston, worked in the gas and oil fields for a while, doing GIS, and now I am working for the County of Montgomery as a GIS analyst. I'd like to go ahead and have the panelists introduce themselves. Alan, would you please start us off?
Yes, I'm Alan Venneman. I work for the city of Sugar Land, and I'm a GIS specialist. I've been working there for about 3 years, but I got started in GIS with the city of Austin about 8 years ago. I worked in parks there, and I've been flying drones for a couple of years now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Matt.
Matt Jackson. I'm a GIS analyst for Memorial Park Conservancy. The Conservancy is a nonprofit that is operating Memorial Park in Houston. I've did about 8 years oil and gas in Houston before going back and getting my master's in natural resource management, where I did research with drones and GIS. And now I do a lot of that continuing work here in Memorial Park for the Conservancy. Wonderful.
Thank you very much. Shruthi, please.
Hi, this is Shruthi, and I work as a geospatial analyst with the Texas A&M Forest Service. So I did my undergrad in geoinformatics back in India, and then pursued my master's in forestry at Texas A&M University. So the specialization that I chose was LiDAR, remote sensing, and GIS. So after graduating, I worked at Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission as a senior remote sensing specialist. And now it's been 6 years working with the Forest Service, and I've been flying drones for around 3 years now. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Last but not least, Jake, please introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning. So unlike everyone else on this panel, I'm actually a video producer, a broadcast engineer, and something of a technologist for video systems. And so I've been flying drones now for about 3 years and helped the city introduce that technology. And we're looking into, how we can further integrate these technologies with our departments and their work throughout the city. And I also work at the city of Sugar Land with Alan.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you. Alan, starting with you, can you give me an example of something that you've been working on or you've worked on in the past where flying the drone and working with the drone and it sort of married up with GIS status, maybe a project you were on?
Yes. Well, the best example that I have is we have one bank along the Brazos River that was having a lot of erosion. So we wanted to get some money for that. And we flew a drone over there to see how the erosion has changed in just a couple of years. And it was remarkable. So we flew and we made a 3D image, and Jake helped me out with that imagery, and we submitted it to the US representative that came down to look at it. And he took a look and saw that, yeah, indeed, we had a lot of erosion. So that required taking the imagery from the drone and stitching it onto the existing map. So the existing map was outdated, and the imagery we just flew was, up to date. So to put those two together would create the whole picture. And of course, we needed GIS in order to do that, because we had to sync up those images perfectly so that we could see that they weren't out of place or the color was wrong. And it took a lot of work. And of course, adding a 3D dimension to that, made it even more fun and complicated.
Wonderful, wonderful. Matt, you work for the Conservancy for the park downtown, for Memorial Park. How are you working with drones and GIS down there?
So our drone, we started with a true color drone, and I fly it over a lot of the construction projects in Memorial Park. For those who have been in the park, you realize there's a lot of new project development going on with ecological restoration and connectivity in the park. We can fly the drone over it, get updated aerial photos on a monthly or semi-monthly basis, and we can give that to our project architects, engineers, They can track the status of the construction projects. And then also we can just give all of our other staff an updated aerial image of the park more frequently than Google or some other source can. And it's all free. We just buy the hardware and now we can get imagery whenever we want. Additionally, this summer we got a multispectral camera on a drone, which is able to pick up near infrared light. And with that, we're able to look at vegetation health. And that was one of the projects we did with an intern this summer, was to try to map out specific plant species around the park, ones that are invasive or not desirable in the park specifically, so we can try to target and remove those.
Wonderful. As somebody who works for the Forestry Service, Shruthi, is that something you would also do, but on a larger scale instead of just a city park, maybe?
Yeah, I was just going to connect back to what Matt said, because having multispectral is something which is very useful, especially in terms of identifying the health of the vegetation or invasive species. But that's something that we just started delving into more. And at least one of the very recent projects that I did was after Hurricane Laura. So a part of the East Texas was affected. So I had to go to one of the state forests and then fly the drones with another team. And we had to get orthomosaics. And just like Matt was telling, the ease at which that you can get and the faster that you get the images, the more beneficial it'll be for forest planners or community planners or anybody like for FEMA or those people, where they can actually look at the images and make informed decisions. So I also collected images and, for example, stitched it together and generated point clouds from these images, which is not as accurate as LiDAR, but still as a backup where we can actually count trees and also do a lot of those kind of analysis. But yes, like multispectral is something that we have started, and that's something that we'll be looking into in the next few months going forward.
Wonderful. Jake, as somebody who does sort of the video, putting things together and stuff, how long does it take once they fly the drone and fly it over an area to sort of get the data together to be ready to be used by analysts?
You know, of course, it depends on the subject matter in a case like this, but luckily computer systems have become increasingly fast. And so if we need something on a faster turnaround, there's various methods we can take to make it to where it sometimes is just hours, if not even shorter, to get us something. And additionally, since we're a lot of times starting with true color regular cameras, and we're a lot of times starting with video as our initial product, not only is it something that we can eventually turn into a GIS product, but the video can also be more or less immediately shown to stakeholders. And that can be very impactful for people who may not otherwise understand the ramifications of what they're seeing on a GIS map.
Great, great. Hey, Alan, so, you know, working with drones and stuff and marrying it up with GIS, where do you see it going in the future? Where do you see this technology? Do you see it growing? I mean, I do. I mean, would you be in agreement with that? And where
yeah, I see a lot of, like Jake was saying, real-time GIS work being done. So for us, we do a lot of assessments of our assets. And, you know, Matt, I'm sure you can speak to this too. We have drones flying over things that the city owns and wants to see. And I can imagine having, I mean, we can already do this, but as far as like our technology at the city of Sugar Land, having a monitor set up right there so that supervisors can take a look at, say, some power lines or some, you know, water management materials, you know, that are like the big complexes that we have all over the city, the lift stations, and seeing them right away and noticing what needs to be worked on, what needs to be done. In terms of GIS, all of that stuff can be put onto either, you know, an orthographic map like you'd see on Google Maps, or it can be put onto, you know, just points, lines, and vectors so that we can see the what needs to be changed, what needs to be worked on. We can prioritize work orders, and we can tie those into a graphic map, and we can see what they look like right now rather than what they looked like a couple of years ago. And I think that's the most powerful thing about drones for cities, is that, you know, this is real-time stuff. We can see things as they are right now. And that's tied into another subject, but the smart city, that's popular in the past couple of years, drones can be a big part of that.
Well, and to build off of what you're saying too, is that because we've been experimenting with those real-time views for people that are back in the office, we're combining drones and their output with remote streaming equipment so that we can have someone that's back at the office watching what we're capturing. And especially when we're talking about creating those 3D objects, they can give us a really good idea of areas we need to focus on.
Yeah.
And in general, that technology just wasn't really there for us even just a few years ago. So as that technology grows, of course, you know, the ways we learn to play with that technology and use it to our benefit is only going to, you know, widen.
Yeah.
Matt, same question to you. I mean, you know, as a conservancy, do you see the need and the benefit of this? And, you know, do you think it's growing?
Yeah, I definitely think it's growing. I mean, when I came into the conservancy middle of last year, they had a drone already, but they weren't using it. And thankfully, I had a background already. So I took it up the first week I was at the conservancy, and I gave them the data, and they just kind of blew them away to see what kind of information they can get from it, just in terms of just the imagery by itself, that they can actually get a stitched aerial photo of the park, you know, on a weekly basis if they need to, or however often they need it. We can get photos of certain project areas, or it could be just a video or just a general photo of a thing they're working on. We can get a bigger picture of something from above, more than just taking it on the ground or just writing a report or something like that. It's a very kind of qualitative data set to have that photo with it. And to the point where it's growing, it's definitely growing just with every piece of technology that with a drone. So most people, I think, are using a smartphone or something like that to fly the drone. Those are getting better. They're getting cheaper. The drones themselves are getting smarter and cheaper, so more people have access to them. And then just the sensors on them, with the ours, the multispectral sensor on it. I can see Shruthi has this multispectral sensor on it as well. Those are getting cheaper. They're getting lighter, so we can put the lighter sensors on smaller drones that are also cheaper, more accessible to more people. So all that together is just leading to a very robust kind of drone industry that can serve many different businesses and industries.
So really, as somebody who works in the forestry department, you know, maintaining trees and you know, like Matt was talking about earlier, invasive species and such, do you see the drone use also is growing in forestry management?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's kind of booming. For sure, the drone and the combination of GIS, especially because I remember when I graduated in 2013, that's when it kind of just started coming in the aspects of research. But especially in the last 4 or 5 years, where it started with the visible cameras and now multispectral to LiDAR, hyperspectral, a lot of these sensors, it's definitely going to be beneficial in a lot of aspects. And at the Forest Service, some of the top projects or top purposes that we use it for is wildfire suppression. That's a huge thing that we are doing at our agency, because it's so useful. Like, all when you put those thermal sensors, and after a fire happens, they fly it to get an aerial view of the fire perimeter, and mainly also to see if there's any spot fires. That really helps the lives of the firefighters and enhances their productivity as well. So a lot of those things, entry points, exit points. So that's one whole aspect, the wildfire suppression and emergency response, where it comes to hurricanes, tornadoes, etc. And then there's one big department of forest management, forest health evaluation. So those kind of things where it really saves time when you do things like automatic tree counts or mapping the invasive species before it can affect or before it can really spread. So I'm very sure, I'm very confident that it's increasing, it's emerging, and there's lots of scope in this particular aspect, drones and GIS.
Great. Jay, so when we talk about drones, I guess we should have backed up here a minute. Are we talking about, you know, can somebody just go to, you know, Walmart or Sam's Club and buy one of these drones and put a camera on it and start shooting? Or is there, you know, is it a specific thing that you have to be licensed to fly, or, you know, that sort of stuff is my question.
Sure. Well, the FAA does make it pretty clear that if you're going to fly it for commercial purposes, you do need to have a license for it. It's not like getting your driver's license. You never actually are tested on being able to fly, which to me is a little scary. But it is about
Yeah.
knowing the safety regulations surrounding how to use it. There is room for hobbyists, though. There's specific places that you're allowed to fly in, though. You're not really supposed to just take off in your backyard and get up in the air. You never know if there might be a helicopter, a small airplane, or something like that that might be in your area that you could be putting in pretty big danger. You know, if I know our airport, our municipal airport, they have to spend a good bit of energy scaring off birds and things like that, because if one were to get sucked into the rotor of a plane, it could actually down that entire plane. So imagine what a drone could do.
Yeah, I know that during Harvey, one of the things I loved watching was my neighbors would have drones, and so they'd take off, and we could see what was going on in the rest of the neighborhood during Harvey. So I guess that was probably not the greatest thing. But Alan, so how did you get into drone piloting and then into GIS, or was it sort of a both, or one and then the other?
My former director of IT, GIS is nestled under IT in the city of Sugar Land. He really wanted to get into drone technology, and Jake over here, he showed me the ropes because he had been doing it a year prior to me. Then I went and I studied and I got my Part 107 for, license from the FAA. That was tough, but it was a lot of fun. We actually learned how to fly it, but it wasn't part of the test. I went to a class, and it was put on by Texas A&M and some guys from Florida that were part of search and rescue, but they're from Florida, they're based there, but they go all over the world. Doing search and rescue, doing disaster relief with drones. So they told a lot of really great stories, and they told us a lot of stuff about drones. They were pilots as well, so they knew a lot about the FAA. And after that, I took a very difficult test. Now this test, you have to be in a small room with a camera facing you, and they watch you while you take the test. So it's a rough one, but I managed to pass, and we got a couple drones now, and we've been doing a lot of work. COVID, of course, has slowed a lot of the drone flying down for us, but I don't think it's going to stay that way. I think we're going to get back into it here pretty soon, especially now the weather's getting nicer.
Great. Matt, how did you get involved? Or did you start out in GIS? Did you start in drones? I mean, how did you?
I got into GIS like the late 2000s. When I graduated school, I got to work for an oil company here in Houston doing GIS. And then in the mid 2010s, I had actually started working on a pilot's license, like for a real airplane. And then I lost my job, so I went to grad school at Texas Tech University. And the professor there I worked with a GIS professor there, and he had a drone, and he wanted somebody to do some research with it. So I ended up doing a research project with the drone and bringing in the data into GIS. Did the research project, got the paper published and everything, and then came to work here. And now I'm basically just kind of continuing the research on. I got the FAA license back in 2017. So I've been flying for about 3.5 years now with the drone. And most of it's just kind of industrial use. I mean, I have a personal drone, but I really just kind of use it for the purpose here in the park. I'm not, kind of you're mentioning, I'm not a big fan of people flying over other people's heads and things like that, just for privacy reasons. But it is fun to fly a drone, for a job. So
Great. So Shruthi, I'm assuming since you work in here and you came from India with your background, how did you get into the drone flying? And I mean, everybody else seems to really enjoy it. Do you enjoy doing this part of the of a GIS portion?
Yeah, for sure. That's like 100% yes, I would say. I definitely enjoy it. So drones, when it started is, so like I was telling, right when I graduated master's is when our lab at Texas A&M, they brought a drone, and I was a little bit of sad because I already graduated and they just started buying all these cool stuff. But then around 3.5 years back, I guess it was around 2017 is when the Texas A&M Forest Service started this UAS program. And they started off with a batch of, I think, 10 or 12 remote pilots in command, which was different people like foresters, firefighters, etc. And they wanted to start off and see how it goes. And now I think we have little more than 30 or 35 pilots. So I was in the first batch and took the FAA Part 107. And initially it started off flying, just getting videos, photos, and doing educational stuff or promotional videos for our state forests and those kind of things. But then slowly, as I started doing it, now I'm trying to get more into the research aspect of things. And yeah, I just took my recurrent exam 107 few months back. So it's the second term of flying. I definitely enjoy it. Yeah.
Great. Jake, as you know, the audience that's watching this is high school juniors and seniors. You know, how would you suggest somebody, you know, if somebody's interested in doing this, how would you suggest they start the ball rolling as far as getting a job flying a drone and marrying it up with GIS and doing all that, doing the collection?
Well, luckily, it's such a quickly growing field that if it's something that they're interested in, there's jobs out there for those people if they want to be pilots. It's you can learn all about it at home. There's different online courses you can take. There's books if you're more of a reader to learn these sorts of things. Plenty of video courses as well. And so it's not too hard to learn about it. And after that, the test taking itself, there is a fee associated, but at the moment, I believe it's only $150. So, you know, big picture, it's not that costly to get into, and it is something you can make money doing.
Great, great.
And you know, adding on to that, we don't have to buy any drones. Like I fly the city's drones, so they are expensive, but it's no cost to me. And if you go to a place that, you know, already has drones and you could say, hey, I'll fly your drones. You know, I can use these cameras, I can use these sensors, and you can get started right away.
That's great. That's great. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for your time today and joining us on this panel. I think we got a lot of good information out there to the students. Does anybody have any closing thoughts or anything they want to add that I may have missed?
No.
Okay. Well, again, I want to thank you all very much for your time and hope you have a wonderful day.
All right. Thank you.